Like that annoying villain in your typical shounen, Luís Filipe Vieira is back in his never-ending quest for power. Benfica are going through tumultuous times, with a lot of division inside the club, but no clear alternative to Rui Costa's disappointing leadership. And so, just like in politics, a populist alternative has emerged. At the time I'm making this video, Luís Filipe Vieira is still in trouble with the Portuguese justice system over corruption. The very club he once led is trying to ban him for life, yet here we are in 2025 with Vieira trying to hustle his way back into Benfica's presidency. This isn't a joke. There's a real chance he might actually win. But regardless of that, this man's life story is so iconic that it deserves to be told and studied. I'm not God, nor do I claim to be holier than thou. I've already shed some light on Pinto da Costa's story, and today I'm going to do the same for one of the most notorious leaders in Portuguese football history. We'll talk about Luís Filipe Vieira's wild rise to power outside of football, how he both saved and destroyed Benfica, and how he could now make the most surprising comeback in recent memory. But first, and as usual, let me give you some context. Luís Filipe Vieira was born in 1942 in the Furnas neighborhood in the Benfica area of Lisbon. As a kid, young Vieira, or Ventoinha as his father called him, already showed a sharp business sense. One of his favorite games was jumping over the walls of the Lisbon Zoo to collect coins that people had thrown. By the age of 14, he was working as a messenger at a tire factory. But as the years went by and with his growing talent for sales, Luís quickly climbed the ladder, gaining influence and even commissions within the company. Within a few years, his ambition made it clear that just being a salesman wasn't enough. He left the company and then launched a business with a single partner. Against all odds, their small company ended up dominating the tire market, so much so that Vieira earned the nickname the Gaddafi of tires. But that was merely a stepping stone. In the 1980s, he moved into construction and his status as a businessman grew to a national level. Then came the final boss of sales, real estate. Most people would have been satisfied at that point, but not Vieira. You see, he always wanted more. His ambition had no limits. His unshakable belief in himself followed him everywhere. Sometimes that combo leads to success, other times to avoidable disasters. In 1984, Luís Filipe Vieira was sentenced to 20 months in prison for helping to steal a truck. Still, some people always seem to have a lucky star. Vieira had his sentence pardoned and managed to move on to the biggest adventure of his life almost unscathed. Contrary to what many believe, Vieira wasn't a passionate Benfica fan desperate to save the club from the mess it was in during the 80s and 90s. In fact, his biggest ally at the time was none other than Jorge Nuno Pinto da Costa, and he was even a registered FC Porto member. Then again, he wasn't a die-hard Porto fan either. Vieira is notorious for having been a member of all three major Portuguese clubs at one point. Benfica since childhood, Porto after meeting Pinto da Costa during the 1984 Cup Winners' Cup final, and Sporting after being diagnosed with a lung problem and using their pools for rehab. But none of those memberships opened the doors to the presidency he so badly wanted. Like everything in his life, Vieira had to start from the bottom, so he picked the local club, FC Alverca. Alverca had never played in a top tier. They were a third division side until Vieira showed up, but the businessman took charge and in less than a decade brought them all the way to the Primeira Liga. It was an extraordinary achievement, but what really made them famous, or infamous, was the transfer of notorious to Benfica. At the time, Vieira was president of Alverca, the selling club, but was already preparing his move to Benfica, the buying club. In short, he negotiated with himself. Benfica paid 5 million euros for 50% of the players' rights, but part of that money mysteriously disappeared. There were allegations of fraud and tax evasion involving Vieira and Jorge Mendes, his partnership in the company that brokered the deal. Vieira was indicted, but the case was dropped for lack of evidence. Still, doubts remained. But honestly, who the fuck cares? Benfica was a mess, watching their biggest rival succeed while they were stuck in a nightmare, until a man with a mustache and ears like Dumbo showed up to lead them back to the top. It's wild to think about it now, but right after Porto won the Champions League, Benfica won the league title, their first in 10 years. When everyone thought the days of success were long gone, a new hope appeared. Sure, things weren't perfect after that title, and it wasn't until Jorge Jesus arrived in 2009, 4 years later, that Benfica truly became competitive again. But the foundations were already being laid. The new Estádio da Luz, the Seixal Training Center, and above all, the end of the awful financial deals that had held Benfica back. There was finally leadership. Whether it was moral or not is up for debate, but at least it seemed to put Benfica before personal interests. Or so we thought. The 2010s were a golden decade for Benfica. 6 league titles, domestic cups, huge transfer sales. For the first time since the 70s, Benfica truly dominated Portuguese football. But behind the scenes, and unnoticed by most, there was a lot of alleged dishonesty. Even during the glory days of the 4 in a row, several accusations came up. Some targeted Vieira's character, others questioned the legitimacy of Benfica's success. The most famous one, the email case in 2017. Benfica was hacked, and shortly after, Francisco J. Marques turned reading emails into must-see TV on Portugal. He even co-wrote a book with Diogo Faria about the case. The leaks made it seem like Benfica controlled the refereeing system, but nothing concrete ever came out of it. Still, luck eventually runs out. In the 2020s, everything came crashing down for Vieira. In 2018, Benfica missed out on a 5th straight league title after selling key players and refusing to invest in replacements. In 2019, they won the league, but the following season was a total disaster. Even with a big league before the Covid break, they lost the title. And of course, Vieira couldn't be blamed, so the scapegoat became Bruno Lage, the coach who had ironically pulled off a similar comeback just a year earlier. To replace him came Jorge Jesus, the same coach Vieira had let walk to a rival, a persona non grata that most Benfica fans didn't want back. But Vieira never cared about criticism, even when maybe he should have. In the end, Jesus' return was a failure. Benfica spent big. Everything looked set for Benfica to reclaim the throne of Portuguese football. But instead, it was Luís Filipe Vieira who lost his throne. In 2021, Vieira's long dance with the justice system finally reached a boiling point. Under investigation in Operation Red Card, he couldn't take the pressure and did the unthinkable. He resigned as Benfica president. The man who had led the club since 2003, who had just secured a 6th term with more votes than many dictatorships, fell down. Not because of bad results, not because of Jesus' flop return, not because of football, it was the money that took him down. Deals and loans worth over 100 million euros that may have harmed both the state and Benfica itself. But Vieira wasn't alone in this game. Like a modern-day mafia movie, he was joined by his son Tiago, his lawyer Bruno Macedo, and the club's biggest private shareholder, the legendary Chicken King, José António dos Santos. Yes, a man who owned 16.33% of Benfica's SAD and who, according to prosecutors, made 11 million euros selling shares back to the club. All of it perfectly timed to benefit, of course, Vieira himself. Legend has it that this very Chicken King saved Vieira from personal bankruptcy by buying an 8 million euro debt just before the 2020 elections. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Later accusations claim that Vieira not only harmed the country, but the club itself, paying outrageous commissions on transfers, funneling money into real estate deals controlled by himself. That alone should be enough to keep any fan from ever wanting him back, even painted in gold. But in Portugal, the average fan's moral compass only points toward victory. And Vieira brought plenty of that. He gave hope to a fan base resigned to living in the shadows. He brought strong leadership, and compared to Rui Costa's incompetent board, it's no wonder some fans miss the old days. The threat is real. So real that Rui Costa's team dug up a 2019 incident where Vieira grabbed a fan by the neck just to try banning him now. I'm not excusing the aggression, but bringing that up now, it's laughable. A perfect example of Rui Costa's weak playbook. In the end, like I said at the beginning, I'm not here to judge. For many, Vieira's achievements outweigh everything he did wrong. Just like some people still see Pinto da Costa as a legendary figure. But here's the difference. At worst, Pinto da Costa is a corrupt man who sabotaged his rivals. At worst, Vieira is a con man who stole from his own club and country. So, if you're a Benfica fan, tell me, would you want Luís Filipe Vieira back as president? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to see more videos on everything about Portuguese football, you're in the right place. Here at Thorn FC, we post weekly content on the most controversial stories and the most overlooked clubs, always open to your ideas. Just like this video about Beira-Mar, a mirror of a harsh reality we keep seeing in our football year after year. Go watch it. I'll see you there.